Hundreds of people are protesting right now outside the state capitol as well as across the country. You're taking a live look at the state capitol where protesters are blocking Lincoln Avenue after the court's conservative majority voted 6-3 to overturn Roe v. Wade. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Jessica Porter. That decision removes federal abortion protections for women, which has been a constitutional precedent in the United States for nearly 50 years. Reaction has been pouring in all day from anti-abortion and abortion rights activists across the country. Let's start in Washington with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy.
It's a slap in the face to women about using their own judgment to make their own decisions about their reproductive freedom.
Americans celebrate this historic victory because we know it will save the lives of millions of children.
26 states are now poised to severely restrict or outlaw abortion. 13 have trigger laws banning abortion upon the court's decision to strike it down. Right now, protesters are making their way into the streets. As I mentioned, they're blocking all lanes of Lincoln Avenue. For pro-choice advocates, this was a devastating blow to 50 years of progress in protecting women's rights. For anti-abortion advocates, this is a big step toward protecting all lives. Denver 7's Megan Lopez takes a look at the impact of the Supreme Court decision right here in Colorado.
There are moments in our lives that are historic, moments that will be in textbooks and taught in classrooms for generations to come. This is one of those moments, the moment the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Denver 7 is going 360 with 4 voices weighing in, some celebrating this moment.
Probably the best day I've been alive so far.
Some outraged by it.
I'm still personally devastated and hurt.
And some wondering what this will mean for other court cases. We'll start with the celebrations.
If you don't have the right to live, you don't have any other right.
Christy Burton-Brown is the chairwoman of the Colorado Republican Party, but she made her way onto the political scene by advocating for a ballot initiative to outlaw abortions.
In 2008, I was the sponsor of the Person Amendment here in Colorado.
She sees this moment as a big step forward, but says there's more work to do around funding and support for families.
We need to give them more options, give them financial support, give them cultural support.
On the other side of the abortion debate, Kiki Counsel, a reproductive rights attorney.
If the federal government says that our individual states have the right to determine what's best for us and for our bodies, what else does the government have a right to say about?
She worries about the disproportionate impacts this decision will have on women across the country.
It will disproportionately impact impoverished people, people that are socioeconomically disadvantaged, and it will affect people in rural communities.
Abortion providers are also worried.
We are heartbroken that this decision is a setback for reproductive health equity, and patient safety.
Even after the fall of Roe, abortion access is legal in Colorado. It was codified into law by the Reproductive Health Equity Act this year. Kim Warner worries about what this will mean for her colleagues in other states and says Colorado is gearing up for an influx of patients.
So we are mobilizing all physicians that can and will perform and give that essential reproductive health care, abortion access. We're all hands on deck.
The fourth voice?
Overturning Roe is a major deal.
DU political science professor Josh Wilson, who says this moment is remarkable because of how the Supreme Court handled it and what it could mean for other rights.
The foundation that Roe stood on top of, by undoing Roe, you're potentially threatening all the other rights that have been established through substantive due process. And so there are big open questions about what will happen with gay rights in the future, what might even happen with access to contraception.
There are moments in our lives that are historic. No matter whether you're pro-choice or anti-abortion, this is one of those moments.
That was Megan Lopez reporting. And the 211-page majority opinion issued today, many are pointing to a specific sentence written by Justice Clarence Thomas. In it, he implies that this decision calls for not only revisiting issues like contraception and same-sex marriage, but overturning those precedents as well. Notably, Justice Thomas does not imply that today's decision could impact Loving versus Virginia, which established a person's right to interracial marriage. That would impact his own marriage with his wife, Ginny, who is linked to the January 6th hearings for allegedly attempting to overturn the 2020 election. Well, here to go deeper on the implications implied by Justice Thomas is Denver 7's Patrick Perez, who joins us live at the state capitol. And Patrick, from Justice Thomas's statement, it's not entirely out of the question that the Supreme Court can overturn those other monumental cases.
We'll get to all of that in just a second, but I want to show you what is going on behind me. This is at the Capitol. You can see protesters in opposition of the Supreme Court's ruling this morning have now blocked all lanes of Lincoln between 14th and Colfax. Denver police just tweeted out moments ago that 13th at Lincoln is also closed to prevent drivers from getting to this area. This crowd has grown dramatically in just the past hour or so that we've been here. They, for the most part, were staying on the steps of the Capitol until eventually they started blocking a lane or two, and now they're blocking, like I mentioned, all lanes here on Lincoln between 14th and Colfax. But like we've mentioned, one of the big concerns in the LGBT community right now is what all of this could mean for same-sex marriage. Colorado.
We got married in 2016.
It'll soon be 6 years since Andrew Morrison and his husband Billy got married. And every year since, they've wondered whether someone would take their right to marry away.
When Trump was elected, that was probably the first time it crossed my mind.
Now, with Roe versus Wade overturned, that concern has grown.
My main thought was my sister and my female friends who, this is impacting them in an immediate sense. But it wasn't long before I kind of started thinking, again, what precedent does this set and how long will my marriage be protected?
In Justice Clarence Thomas's concurring opinion, he writes the court should reconsider several cases, including the right to same-sex marriage.
Depending on what that decision would look like. Does it mean that suddenly folks who are married across the country, their marriages are dissolved? Does that mean that folks are going to have to pursue civil unions?
It's why Garrett Royer and his team at One Colorado will be working with the legislature next year to make same-sex marriage in the state a protected right. Currently, it's not written into law.
We're going to have to take some time and do some strategizing to make sure that whatever that framework or legislation looks like next year, we are in a good place to ensure that the rights of LGBTQ Coloradans are protected.
For now, LGBTQ Coloradans will march this Pride weekend with a renewed sense of purpose.
I think there's going to be a little bit of anger, a little bit of resistance, but ultimately I think a lot of passion, specifically because of what's happened today.
So Governor Polis, who himself is in a same-sex marriage, says what happened today was shocking and saddening, and that Colorado will stand as a beacon of freedom for all. Back to you guys.
All right, thank you, Patrick. The Supreme Court ruling will have a major impact on abortion procedures across the country. It will not only trigger laws to ban abortion, but it'll have a ripple effect on states like Colorado as well, even despite our state's efforts to protect access. Joe St. George explains.
This is the scene outside the Supreme Court in Washington. Both sides either cheering in celebration with this decision or yelling in frustration at the Supreme Court building. But to some degree, today's opinion was expected. That leaked opinion from a few weeks back is essentially what the court issued today. And now changes will happen across the country.
I'm angry. I am extremely excited.
The Supreme Court opinion may have come from Washington, but it will impact every state in the country. According to the nonprofit Guttmacher Institute, each one of these states is certain or likely to ban abortion. 26 states in total, with new restrictions coming in some places. Progressive cities like San Diego, Boulder, Colorado, Las Vegas, and Buffalo, New York are now bracing to become abortion safe havens.
We're already seeing out-of-state patients coming from Texas.
And that includes San Francisco. Gilda Gonzalez is with Planned Parenthood of Northern California. We chatted with her ahead of today's ruling. It's estimated that if the expected restrictions are passed, 30% of the country's abortion clinics will soon be in California. Ideas have already been discussed here to not just privately fundraise to subsidize a woman's travel from another state, but state taxpayer dollars from Californians may soon be allocated for people living elsewhere to come to California.
There are a lot of ideas that are being floated. I want them to know that they're not alone.
One concern in progressive states, including places like Colorado, is whether out-of-state patients will soon fill appointments and make it more difficult for women from their state to schedule a procedure. Gilda tells me balancing in-state appointments with out-of-state ones may be needed.
Everybody needs to be aware of what is happening.
But one thing we learned here,
we really believe that the abortion industry is predatory.
Is the anti-abortion movement is getting ready for what's next, too. Kristen Turner is with Pro-Life San Francisco. She says those opposed to abortion, like her, will be increasing their advocacy in progressive cities with the goal of restricting abortions not just in conservative states, but in liberal states eventually too. She wants Congress to pass a nationwide ban.
All the work we do is going to have to be ramped up 110%.
So you really think abortions could be illegal in San Francisco one day?
Yep. Unless you are dreaming big, unless you are fighting for those rights that you know people think are impossible, it's never going to get done. And that's what we're here to do, because 50 years ago, nobody thought Roe v. Wade was going to be overturned.
I'm Joe St. George reporting.
Colorado was the first state in the nation to allow abortions. A clinic in Boulder has long provided abortion services, and despite years of being the focus of protests, reports that the founder, he is already seeing more women from other states coming in. Denver 7's Ann Trujillo has that story.
It's too late for him. He doesn't have a chance to repent anymore.
Dr. Warren Hearn's Boulder practice has been a lightning rod on the abortion rights issue, with passionate opinions dating back decades on both sides.
I, of course, personally was scared, and I'm not even a physician.
We condemn that violence as well as the murder of over 30 million defenseless, precious children made in the image of God.
And now, at 83 years old, the doctor who performs late-term abortions is still at the center of that storm.
And I'm on the hit list. I have letters from them saying, don't bother to wear a bulletproof vest, we're going to go for a headshot.
His clinic is surrounded by security, bulletproof glass windows, cameras everywhere. As a med student, he tells me in the 60s he saw women die from illegal abortions. And that's what led him here.
We see patients who are far along in pregnancy, who have fetal abnormalities, genetic disorders, and they've decided to end a desired pregnancy at a late stage after the problem has been discovered. The fetus has no brain, has no kidneys, has no lungs, and so women decide that they don't want to put their child through that.
He has faced a tsunami of criticism and hateful rhetoric and makes no apologies for the work he does.
I don't care what they think, but I hate them because they bother my patients and they threaten their lives and they threaten me. You don't live in fear, you live with fear.
He also knew this Supreme Court decision was inevitable.
When Trump was elected, that sealed the fate of Roe versus Wade.
Despite that, he still believes in his work and is even thinking about expansion to accommodate all those from states where abortion might soon be banned.
The Texas laws and the Oklahoma laws, these other laws, are very cruel and punitive for women, and we look for any abnormalities that might be existing in the uterus. I love my work. I feel it's a great privilege to do this work, and we've helped thousands of women, and I think that we'll keep doing this.
To read more of our in-depth coverage on today's decision by the Supreme Court, visit our website, thedenverchannel.com. When we come back, the Avs are taking on the Lightning for Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Finals. We'll check in on the fans that are waiting to see if the Cup stays in Denver.